When U.S. forces seized key Venezuelan ports, it was a major strategic move to tear down the drug trafficking network used by cartels. The moment American troops took control of a Venezuelan port, once controlled by narco networks, the map of power in the Caribbean changed. What was once a hidden river for cocaine and cartel money suddenly became a strong position for U.S. military oversight. The ports of Guaira, Carúpano, and Puerto La Cruz were lifelines for drug exports, but now they stand under a new, dominant authority. This authority did more than enforce order. It rewrote the balance between crime, weak states, and global enforcement. For many years, these ports served as the main start points for narcotics that flooded markets in the US and Europe. Every container, every fishing boat, and every shipment that moved at night brought billions of dollars into illegal accounts. Cartels like Tren de Aragua and the Cartel de los Soles relied on these ports for their survival. Their influence went beyond just moving drugs. It reached deep into Venezuela's political and military structure. Military commanders were paid off. Customs officials were ordered to look the other way. The ports became zones where cartels could operate without punishment. When U.S. forces moved in, that entire chain of corruption was violently cut. The seizure of these ports is not just a battle action, it is a clear sign. It tells the world that the U.S. effort against cartels has moved past talk and turned into direct action. By taking physical control of these water gateways, the U.S. military moved the front line of this conflict from American streets to the source of the supply itself. The old way of doing things, chasing shipments at sea after they left, has been replaced by stopping the drugs before they can move. Now, shipments are stopped before they leave Venezuelan soil. The result is a crippling of the most profitable phase of the trafficking cycle: export. This new authority showed instant dominance. Operations inside the seized ports changed overnight. Runways that cartels once used for drug flights now host U.S. reconnaissance drones. Docks that were once lined with cartel boats are now guarded by Marines and Coast Guard units. Surveillance radars watch every ship leaving the harbor, while intelligence teams use satellite pictures to stop any unauthorized departure. What was once a dark hub of illegal commerce is now a strongly protected observation zone. The message is clear and decisive. The United States will not wait for drugs to reach its borders. It will strike at the source, control the critical points, and own the routes. From a military point of view, the seizures are part of a larger plan to deny the cartels everything they need. They are denied their transit routes, they are denied their money, and they are denied political protection. But the operation also has a deeper purpose: leverage. By cutting off the cartel's access to sea exports, the U.S. puts pressure on the Venezuelan government indirectly. For many years, people inside the regime made money from their alliances with cartels, using drug money to keep the military loyal. Now, with that money quickly disappearing, that loyalty becomes unstable.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
Each port that is seized is not just a hard blow to the cartels. It is a powerful wedge driven into the very core of the government's power structure. This massive campaign has not gone unnoticed. Global experts call it the most significant U.S. military increase in the Caribbean in 3 decades. The power of the operation comes from amphibious assault ships, destroyers, and aircraft from carriers. Logistical bases in Puerto Rico, Curacao, and Aruba are now used for quick deployment. The United States has created an effective ring of steel around Venezuela's coast. Each seized port is also a forward operating base, a staging ground for intelligence, surveillance, and future missions that will target cartel infrastructure further inland. The Caribbean, which was once a lawless sea of narco-traffic, has now become a militarized theater. The economic results for the cartels are humiliating and devastating. Every port under U.S. control means hundreds of millions of dollars in lost export money. With the sea routes sealed shut, traffickers are forced to find new ways through land corridors across Colombia and Brazil. These new routes are much costlier, take longer, and are far more dangerous. The cartel's logistics collapse, their supply chains break apart, and their profit margins shrink. For the cartels, the need to adapt becomes an act of desperation. Without the ability to export drugs in large amounts, they lose their power with international buyers. This forces them to risk losing dominance to rival criminal groups in Mexico and Central America. The U.S. operation does not just hit their movement of drugs, it hits their very identity and destroys their image of invincibility. The illusion of their autonomy is completely broken. The exposure of their logistics reveals a great weakness. The cartel's global reach relies entirely on physical infrastructure like runways, docks, and customs corridors. Without these specific parts, they are unable to move. The strikes and seizures made this dependency visible to everyone. The cartel empire is not an untouchable abstract idea. It is a tangible machine, and machines fail when their essential parts are taken away. The belief in cartel resilience was a myth built on simple access, not true innovation. When the geography itself is made hostile and the ports are militarized, their entire operational model collapses from within. The cartels are forced into a chaotic scramble, and this adaptation itself is a sign of their weakness. Smaller groups begin to rise up, filling the holes left by the paralyzed major networks. Freelancers, pirates, and local militias take over specific jobs like protection or transport. The criminal economy breaks apart, or fragments, but it keeps trying to survive. The U.S. strategy is designed to disrupt this, making their cost of operating extremely high. The goal is deterrence through exhaustion, to destroy the cartel's infrastructure, isolate the regime that protects them, and break the cycle of acting without consequences. The seizure of vessels and cargo from these ports also brought to light a critical and darker truth. The cartel's success depended entirely on state corruption. The seizures revealed clear signs of government help, customs officers ignoring crimes, naval commanders taking bribes, and political figures gaining huge benefits from the steady flow of illegal money. By setting up a presence in Venezuelan logistics areas, the U.S. military did not just cut off the cartels, it also exposed the entire network of state involvement that allowed them to flourish. Every illegal transfer and intercepted shipment now acts as evidence of how deep these ties run. The infrastructure that once protected the cartels was never a shield. It was a liability waiting to be exposed. This exposure has shaken the political allies who once protected the cartels. Heightened attention from the world and public exposure forces many of these figures to retreat from sight. Sanctions target their families, homes, and foreign accounts. In important circles, their names disappear and their influence vanishes.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
This is not a quiet change, it is a public unmasking. Once the mask falls, the collapse that follows is certain. What makes this phase different is the level of visibility. Intelligence operations are no longer kept secret. They are announced publicly. Drone footage, leaked messages, and official press releases turn the act of exposure itself into a weapon. This high visibility causes panic, denial, and defection among the cartel's allies. The more cartel allies try to hide, the more obvious their absence becomes. Their power fades, not because they are arrested, but because they can no longer operate in the open. The psychological impact of this operation extends far beyond the Caribbean. Across all of Latin America, cartel leaders are watching with growing fear. The seizure of these Venezuelan ports is a signal that no safe place is safe and no route is untouchable. This creates a frightening example for criminal groups who are used to hiding behind corrupt states. The fear that strikes them is not of arrests or extradition. It is the fear of military precision and the total, undeniable loss of control. This fear breaks alliances, shatters loyalty, and forces cartels to turn inward, becoming suspicious and defensive. It is a form of psychological warfare, fought through shock, spectacle, and the sudden disappearance of safe ground. The ports also serve another military purpose, gathering intelligence. Each location becomes a listening post for tracking communications, ship movements, and money transfers tied to narcotics rings. The U.S. gains constant eyes and ears deep inside Venezuela's maritime area. Drones patrol the coastline, advanced aircraft monitor the airspace, and special teams conduct missions inland. The information gathered does more than break up drug movements. It maps the entire structure of the state's involvement. For the first time, Washington holds direct evidence of how drug money connects with Venezuela's powerful political figures. This exposure destabilized the political protection that allowed the cartels to flourish. The campaign has been called a bold reinterpretation of global law, using the same reasons once used for fighting terrorism. Washington stands firm, calling the cartels non-state armed groups engaged in warfare, not just common criminals. The moral argument for this decisive action is powerful. If a state protects cartels that poison populations, does it not lose its right to be free from international interference? In response to this decisive dominance, the Venezuelan government has condemned the port seizures, calling it an imperialist occupation. State media says it is proof of an American invasion hidden by anti-drug operations. Allies like Russia and China have spoken out against the actions, warning that the U.S. is creating instability. Yet, Washington remains steady, insisting the operations are legal under the right of collective self-defense against criminal threats. The tension between these forces creates a dangerous cycle. Every U.S. deployment causes defensive moves from Venezuela and its partners. Naval exercises, air patrols, and intelligence leaks create constant tension. This new environment has forced cartels to adopt the logic of survival. They disperse their assets, find new routes, and use backup alliances. They move through remote areas like Suriname and Guyana, or even expand to Africa, using weak enforcement there. The network becomes less central, but more difficult to destroy, showing that for every loss, they try to grow another limb. The economic and diplomatic pressure continues to mount. Financial sanctions targeting shipping companies and fuel suppliers cause shockwaves across the Caribbean. Small economies once dependent on gray market trade feel the impact immediately. Corruption networks lose their cash flow. The pressure intended to crush cartels also squeezes fragile states. Diplomatically, regional groups like the Organization of American States struggle to agree, with some nations urging restraint and others supporting the U.S. The U.S. campaign is unprecedented in its scope. It is not just focused on stopping drugs, it is focused on reshaping the entire regional order. With these ports under U.S. command, the flow of narcotics from northern South America through the Caribbean has been crippled. The financial networks tied to the Venezuelan elite are exposed. The cartel's logistical backbone has been shattered. Every seizure sends shockwaves through the illegal markets that depended on predictable routes. While cartels can try to adapt, their attempts cost time, money, and power, things they can no longer afford. At the highest level of strategy, the seizures are the foundation of a new policy, moving from reactive policing to proactive disruption. It is the difference between playing defense and fundamentally changing the entire game. Instead of waiting for drugs to reach American shores, the operation targets the very infrastructure that makes the shipments possible. The ports are the arteries, the seizures are the clamps. Once the clamps are closed, the entire criminal system begins to suffocate. The consequences go far beyond just narcotics. The seizure of Venezuelan ports weakens the current regime at a critical time. It cuts off one of the last steady sources of illegal money and exposes military officers who were helping the trafficking. It forces the regime to depend even more heavily on its few remaining global allies, making its isolation worse. In a global political sense, this U.S. operation is both a counter-narcotics mission and a precision strike against state corruption. It is pressure by strangulation, economic, logistical, and psychological. Every seized port is a turning point. Every intercepted shipment is a signal of dominance. The operation is not about symbols. It is about control. Control of the territory, control of the routes, and control of the narrative. For the first time, the United States is not chasing cartels across the sea, but standing on their doorstep, holding the keys to their empire's gateways. The physical presence of American power in the Caribbean is a clear message. The age of tolerance for cartel-linked governments is ending. The ultimate result is already being written into the geography of power. The ports, once controlled by the cartels, now serve another master. With that loss of access, an entire criminal ecosystem begins to collapse from the coast inward. The immediate effects, seized assets, caught operatives, and destroyed logistics are easily visible. The deeper effects, fear, isolation, and mistrust, will spread silently through every level of the cartel organizations. Those hidden fractures are what ultimately bring down an empire built on fear and weakness. When a system built on fear begins to fear itself, its end is near. The operation has redefined what vulnerability means for the cartels and what resolve means for the United States. It marks the start of a new story, one where the empire of fear stands completely exposed to its own fragility. The strike may not end the cartel era overnight, but it has torn open a path that decisively shows American dominance is inevitable. This takedown was just the start. The fight isn't finished. On your screen is the next video. Click the video, it opens right away, and you'll see the cartels crushed even harder.